They called it Friendsgiving. Cute, casual, cozy. A brunch instead of a dinner. Mimosas instead of wine. A small, intimate thing with just family, they said. Only, somehow, I wasn't part of that definition. It started with a text from Dad Peter, if I'm being precise. Hey, sweetheart, we're keeping it simple this year. Just a quiet thing. Susan's idea. Maybe we do something next month? Love you. I stared at the message like it might reshape itself into something better. Like if I blinked long enough, quiet wouldn't mean without you. Money's tight, they said. Which was strange, considering I'd wired $900 to them just last week to help cover the condo fees, and paid the property tax the month before that, and co-signed on Eli's stupid 2-door car that he didn't need and couldn't afford. But hey, maybe they were budgeting for spiritual reasons. Maybe it wasn't about the turkey, or the stuffing, or the $12 a slice cheesecake that magically appears every year from some boutique bakery in Midtown. Maybe it was about silence. Still, I said nothing. Not to them. Not yet. Instead, I did what I always do when something feels off. I checked. I drove to their apartment. It's a sleek building in a polished part of town. The kind with overpriced landscaping and terrible parking. And wouldn't you know it, that night, the entire block glowed gold with fairy lights and laughter. And parked right in front Madison's electric SUV, Eli's blue convertible, even Uncle Brad's rusted sedan that hadn't run properly since 2012. So much for quiet. From across the street, I watched it unfold like a play I wasn't cast in. Toasts were made. Laughter echoed up the walls. Peter stood with his stupid apron, carving turkey like some suburban king. Madison handed out favors. Eli posted selfies by the bar cart. And I stood there in the cold, clutching takeout I no longer felt like sharing, watching my family live a version of life where I didn't exist. No accident, no oversight, just omission. I don't remember pressing the buzzer. Maybe my thumb moved before my brain did. Or maybe part of me still hoped there was some wild, harmless explanation, like a surprise party, where I was the surprise and not the forgotten. But the buzzer echoed, and after a moment the door clicked open. Peter stood there, my father, still wearing the apron. He blinked, confused, the way someone does when their phone rings from a number they didn't save. Lena, what are you doing here? There it was. Not guilt, not relief, just irritation wrapped in faint surprise. I could see behind him now, Susan arranging napkins, Madison laughing in a champagne haze, Eli half slouched on the velvet couch, eating shrimp off a silver tray. I held his text up wordlessly. Thought you canceled dinner. He blinked again, this time a little faster. His expression didn't falter, it adjusted, like a well-oiled machine. Oh, we meant with you, just keeping it small. Just us. Just us. That phrase cracked something open inside me. I am us. I wanted to scream. I am flesh and bone and paycheck and babysitter and 2 a.m. therapist. I am the one who said yes every single time, even when I couldn't afford to. But all I said was, I'm family. He nodded. Too fast. Of course you are, sweetheart. Of course. It's just that, well, Madison brought her partner. Eli invited a few friends from his program, and we didn't want it to get crowded. I looked into that warm apartment, candles flickering on the marble countertop, playlists humming, silverware clinking. Not crowded, curated. And I wasn't on the list. Madison raised her glass lazily toward me in mock acknowledgement, a half smile that said, oops, didn't think you'd show up. That was the moment, the doorframe moment, the one you remember for the rest of your life. The exact second you realize this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't miscommunication or forgetfulness. It was intentional. I didn't say anything else. I didn't cry, beg, or plead my case. I just turned and walked back into the night, the chill slicing clean through my coat. Behind me, the door shut, and no one followed. The drive home felt endless. I wasn't sure if it was the traffic or the realization setting in like slow poison. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't scream. I didn't even play music. The silence felt safer. Like maybe if I didn't make a sound, the reality wouldn't fully solidify. But it had already solidified hours ago. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. Deliberately, strategically, casually, like skipping over an ingredient in a recipe you never liked anyway. My apartment welcomed me with cold floors and dim light, but it felt more honest than anything I'd seen that night. I sat on the edge of the bed with my coat still on, scrolling through old texts on my phone, screenshots of transfers, family chats, group messages that mostly read, "Hey Lena, can you help out this month? Would you mind picking up Eli from school again? Madison's in a bind, can you float the catering deposit for the bridal shower?" My thumb hovered over a recent one, SUV deposit sent. That one stung. Harder than most. I was supposed to surprise them this Christmas. A gift. An upgraded vehicle to replace the family minivan. Something safe and reliable. Something thoughtful. They'd need it, right? Apparently not. I picked up the phone and called the dealership. "Hi, this is Lena Foster. I need to cancel the order I placed last week, the SUV. "Yeah, the white one." The salesman hesitated. "Oh, okay. Are you sure? We had it set for Christmas Eve delivery. Plans changed. Click. Simple as that." For years, I kept telling myself they were just forgetful, that the missed calls and overlooked milestones weren't intentional, that they were busy, distracted, overwhelmed. The truth is, they remembered me just fine. When the mortgage ran tight, when Eli needed tutoring, when Susan wanted someone to help plan her garden party because Madison was too slammed with work, when Peter needed help rewriting his resume because you're so much better with words, sweetheart. They remembered me when I was convenient, when I was helpful, when I was useful. And the terrifying part? I let them. The calls started the next morning. I ignored them. Susan left the first voicemail, sugary concern, a practice tone that came out only when people were watching or when she was performing maternal warmth for strangers. "Hi, honey. Are you okay? We were surprised you left so suddenly last night. Your father's worried. We missed you." No mention of what they did. No apology. Just surprised that I hadn't swallowed it. Again. Then Peter called. His voice was firm, clipped. "Your mother's upset. You need to call her back. We're not doing this." Doing what exactly? Acknowledging that you cut me out? That you celebrated while pretending I wasn't real? I sent both calls to voicemail. Then came the others. Madison left a lazy text. "Drama much? You could have just told us you were feeling left out." And Eli's sweet, manipulative Eli tried to FaceTime me with his son on screen, probably hoping the guilt would soften me. It almost did. Until I remembered that just last weekend, Eli had casually asked if I'd mind watching his kid again. Just for a few hours, he'd said, "You're always so good with him," and I had agreed. Like always, no more. Sunday came, a ritual day, family brunch, an unspoken contract, rain or shine, sick or tired, 2-hour commute or not, I was always there, even when no one noticed if I was or wasn't. This time, I didn't go. At noon, the phone rang. "Peter, where are you?" he asked, skipping past greetings. "Everyone's waiting." "I'm not coming," I said plainly. Silence. Then, "Don't be ridiculous. It's Sunday. You always come. I know what day it is." Another pause. I could almost hear the calculations happening on the other end. The shift into strategy. "Your mother made your favorite. She's upset." "She made Madison's favorite," I corrected. "The quiche with the spinach I'm allergic to." He ignored it. "Your mother didn't sleep last night. She's heartbroken. Eli said you stormed off." I walked away. I interrupted. "Over what? A misunderstanding?" "No. Over a pattern. A decision." I expected anger. Instead, I got ice. "Fine. Be that way. But don't come crying when you realize what you've thrown away. Thrown away, like I was the one who abandoned them, like I hadn't been throwing myself into the flames for years to keep their house warm. I hung up, blocked the number. One by one, I began unplugging every wire that kept me tethered to their needs, their expectations, their emergencies, and it was easy, so much easier than I expected. But they didn't give up. No, my family had structure, strategy. They moved like an army trained in manipulation, a smear campaign disguised as concern. Friends of the family began texting me. Your mom is worried sick. They didn't mean to hurt you. Can't we all just talk? But they weren't texting because they cared. They were texting because they'd been sent. Flying monkeys, as my therapist later called them. People deployed to guilt trip me into returning to the role I was born into. The reliable one. The good daughter. The convenient backup plan. That role had expired. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't renewing the contract. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence, of static, of missed calls stacking up like unread emails from a past life. I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I didn't fold. So they escalated. Peter was the first to try a new tactic. A single-line text, military in tone, call me. I didn't. Later that evening, there was a knock at my door. Not tentative, not friendly, demanding. The first stood behind the peephole, heart pounding, watching my father glare at the wood as if his stare alone might melt it open. Lena, I know you're in there, he barked. Another knock. Harder, more insistent. You need to stop this nonsense. Your mother is in tears every night. I didn't raise you to be like this. I almost laughed. Raise me? You didn't raise me. You maintained me like a backup generator that hums in the background until the power goes out. After 15 minutes of yelling, he finally gave up. Not before slipping a folded note under the door. I picked it up with the same care I'd reserve for a poisonous spider. Your behavior is unacceptable. You've hurt this family deeply. We didn't raise you to be selfish. We need to talk like adults. Stop acting like a child. I crumpled it without reading another word. The next day, the unknown number called twice before I answered. The voice on the other end made my stomach sink. Hey, Lena, it's Maddie. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. Look, this is getting out of hand. You missed brunch again, and Mom's a wreck. Dad's furious. You made your point. Can we move on now? I stayed silent. Seriously? She scoffed. You're really doing this over one dinner? Grow up. There it was. The gut punch of dismissal. The way she always managed to minimize everything down to nothing. The signature move of someone who's never had to question her seat at the table. Madison, I said quietly. I didn't get anything for graduation. Not even a card. You got a car. Oh my God. You're still on about that? You're so dramatic. I exhaled. That's what you think this is? Drama? She laughed. What else would it be? You've always been overly sensitive. Not everything is some personal attack. You're right, I said. Sometimes it's just plain neglect. I hung up. Later that week, it was Eli's turn. He showed up at my office. With his son. I knew what this was before he even opened his mouth. Using his kid as a human shield. Classic Eli weaponizing warmth to bypass accountability. Uncle Lena, his son squealed, running into my arms. And just like that, I broke my own rule. I hugged him. Because he was innocent. He didn't choose to be part of this. Eli stood in the corner, arms folded, watching like he was scoring points. He misses you, he said. I nodded. I miss him too. We all do. Do you? I asked. Or do you just miss what I did for you? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he smiled that practiced smile of his. Mom needs help with the mortgage this month. And I was hoping. There it is, I said. The real reason you're here. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't make a scene. I just stood up, handed his son a sticker from my desk, and walked them both to the door. I have plans this weekend, I said, answering the next question before he could ask. Find someone else. But the most insidious play came from George, my grandfather. A package, no return address, just my name in neat cursive. Inside, a bundle of childhood photos, a birthday card I made when I was 6, and a small plastic horse I used to carry in my backpack like it was a talisman, and a note. Family is all we have in the end. Don't throw yours away over pride. We miss you. Come home. Pride. As if choosing not to be used is ego. As if demanding the bare minimum of love and decency is stubbornness. As if my absence is a tantrum, not a boundary. I kept the toy horse. Put it on my bookshelf, next to the books I bought for myself. The certificates I earned alone. The photos I took when I traveled by myself every moment I had to create on my own, because they were too busy making Madison's vision boards and Eli's birthday montages. Then, the voicemails started coming through my work line, the one number they could still reach. Susan's voice, cracked and trembling, filled my inbox. Your father's blood pressure is up again. He's not sleeping. You're doing this to him. What did we ever do to deserve this? I wanted to scream. You lied. You erased. You excluded. You used. You discarded. But I stayed silent. The last message was the clearest mask drop of them all. Her voice, suddenly cold, stripped of the matriarch act. Fine. Be that way. But don't come crying when you realize what you've lost. Madison just got promoted. Eli and Clara are expecting again. Life goes on. We're still a family even if you've chosen not to be part of it. Not an invitation. A threat. A final twist of the knife. See what you're missing. See how replaceable you are. See how little your absence changes anything. And still, I didn't respond. Because I finally understood something I hadn't before. I hadn't been invited in the first place. 6 months. That's how long it's been since I walked away from them. It's strange how grief behaves. You'd expect it to arrive like a landslide, sudden, crushing, irreversible. But in truth, it drips in slowly, like a faucet you forgot to shut off. A name you hear in passing. A recipe you once made together. A voicemail you keep deleting without listening to. Some days I still wonder if they ever meant to love me. Other days I wonder if they even knew how. No apology has come. Not a single acknowledgement. Not a flicker of responsibility. Instead, I hear through friends, through relatives I haven't blocked that I'm the villain now. The ungrateful daughter. The overreactor. The one who abandoned family over a brunch invite. The narrative was rewritten almost overnight. Like a poorly edited Wikipedia article. I suppose Madison always had a talent for spinning a story. She's going through something, she reportedly told a cousin. Probably some mental health thing. We're giving her space. How generous of her. I used to think healing looked like reunion, like forgiveness, like coming back to the same dinner table, just with better boundaries. Now, I know better. Healing isn't a return. It's an escape. It's not soft. It's not palatable. It's hard and ugly and gutting and honest. I didn't lose them. I let go of the version of them I was clinging to. The one I built out of excuses and second chances. The one I defended every time someone told me, you deserve better. Because what they kept doing wasn't just one forgotten invite. It was a pattern, a blueprint, a hierarchy I was never meant to rise in. There was always a golden child. And there was always me, dependable, invisible, useful, until I stopped being any of those things. And that's when I became a problem. The money I once funneled into their lives now goes into mine. I finally replaced my old car, not with an SUV for them, but with something just for me. Something small and red and irrational because I wanted it, and that was reason enough. I go to therapy twice a month now, not to fix myself, but to learn how not to shrink, to stop folding into someone else's comfort zone, to be okay with not being the good one. I've built stronger friendships, too quiet, consistent ones. People who show up when they say they will. People who ask how I'm doing and wait for the answer. People who don't tally favors like a ledger. Last weekend, I hosted a dinner. 6 friends, 2 dogs, 1 scratched up table filled with wine stains and laughter. We used mismatched chairs and forgot to chill the drinks. Nobody judged. Nobody played roles. Nobody asked me to prove I deserved to be there. And afterward, someone stayed behind to help me clean up. She looked at me and said, "I love how peaceful it feels here." And I almost cried, because peace, for me, was always something I had to fake in front of my family. A performance, a mask, a bite my tongue and don't rock the boat kind of peace. But this was real. Sometimes I still hear their voices, Madison's superiority, Eli's faux sweetness, Susan's guilt-laced concern, Peter's cold authority. They exist now only as echoes. I don't hate them. That would take too much energy. I just don't carry them with me anymore. I don't burn at the thought of what could have been, because what could have been never existed. They didn't reject me for who I became. They never accepted me for who I was. The last message I received from Susan before blocking her final number was simple. "You'll regret this one day. Family is forever." She meant it as a threat, but I read it as a truth, because family is forever. So I stopped calling them mine. To anyone reading this who recognizes their own reflection in these words, the middle child, the invisible sibling, the ATM, the therapist, the one who gets it and fixes it and keeps the peace. You are not wrong for walking away. You are not selfish for saying no more. You are not broken because they didn't see your worth. You don't owe them a lifetime of yourself just because you share blood. Family is not about DNA. It's about who chooses you when you have nothing to offer but your presence. It's about who celebrates your joy when it doesn't benefit them, who shows up without a motive, who stays when the lights are off and the house is quiet and you're not your best self. If they don't do that, they are not your people. And if they treat your worth like it's conditional, leave. Burn the bridge. Or better, build a boat and sail away. Because on the other side of grief, there is peace. And I promise when you find it, you'll never trade it for a seat at a table you were never meant to sit at in the first place. Story 2. I never imagined I'd be the woman who blew up her ex's entire world at a birthday party. But life has a funny way of surprising you, especially when you've been treated like you're disposable. My name's Natalie Foster. Well, it used to be. These days, I go by Natalie Jensen, a name I reclaimed after the kind of marriage you don't just walk away from, you crawl, bleeding, but free. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois. Dad, Robert, was a cop for nearly 30 years. Mom, Linda, works at a public elementary school, and she still packs a lunch like it's 1995. We weren't poor, but we weren't country clubbing it either. Our house had character, aka creaky floors and loud radiators. And despite everything that's happened, that house is still the safest place I've ever known. I went to college for accounting, graduated with honors, and landed a solid job at Morrison, Tate & Lane mid-sized firm. Reasonable hours, decent benefits. I wasn't chasing yachts or status. I just wanted stability. Maybe that's why I didn't see Leo coming. Leo Armstrong was the kind of man who could turn heads and disarm you in the same breath. I met him on a rainy October morning after colliding outside a Starbucks. Yes, like a cliché romantic comedy. I spilled half a latte on his sleek, tailored coat and panicked. He smiled like he'd been waiting for that moment all his life. "Well," he said, "you owe me a drink." But I prefer dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend. A weekend turned into months. Leo wasn't just charming, he was loaded. Son of manufacturing moguls, Eleanor and Charles Armstrong. Old money. Polished shoes, and the kind of dinner parties where forks have rules. But Leo never made me feel beneath him. He loved that I was normal, said my family grounded him. That didn't last. Meeting his parents was like walking into a Renaissance oil painting, grand, beautiful, and cold as hell. Their mansion in Winnetka had more square footage than my high school. Eleanor looked me over like I was a thrift store find at a Sotheby's auction. "So, Natalie," she said, swirling her peanut like a villainess. You work in accounting? I nodded. Morrison, Tate and Lane. She smiled like she'd just smelled something unpleasant, practical. When I told her about my parents, I could practically hear her pearls clutch. Charles, meanwhile, barely glanced at me, too busy talking to Leo about quarterly earnings and their firm's upcoming acquisition. Still, when Leo proposed 3 months later, I said yes. I was in love. Stupidly, madly, blindly. The wedding was elegant and stiff, his parents' way of saying they were tolerating me. But I thought, give it time, they'll come around. Spoiler, they didn't. Leo and I moved into a high-rise in downtown Chicago. The apartment had views of Lake Michigan, marble countertops, a wine fridge. It felt like a life someone else had designed, and I was just borrowing it. 2 months in, I found out I was pregnant. Leo spun me around the living room, grinning like a kid on Christmas. Even his parents warmed slightly, though Eleanor couldn't resist saying, at least the baby will have proper genetics from one side. Our son, Caleb Leo Jr., if you asked him, was born on a frigid December morning. I called him CJ. He was perfection, wrapped in hospital blankets and promise. Those first couple of years? Honestly, not bad. Leo seemed like he'd stepped into fatherhood with ease. He read bedtime stories, took CJ to the park, occasionally even cooked Sunday breakfast, which mostly involved burning eggs, but hey, points for effort. But when CJ turned 3, something started shifting. Leo's late nights at the office became routine. Big merger, babe. You wouldn't get it. He stopped checking in. He stopped seeing me. Then came the night his mother barged into our apartment unannounced, looking like she'd just come from a Vogue shoot despite the wind outside. Why weren't you at the Armstrong Industries gala last night? She demanded, brushing past me. What gala? I blinked. She scoffed. Don't play dumb. Every executive and spouse was there except you. Leo came home late that night. I was waiting in the living room, hands clenched. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He sighed, poured himself a drink like this was beneath him. Because you don't belong there, Nat. Those women, they talk about Monet, not municipal budgets. I was stunned. I'm your wife. You were charming when we were dating, but I need someone who can fit the part. That night I cried until my skin hurt. Still, I stayed. For CJ, for the idea of who Leo used to be. And then one Tuesday, everything snapped. I was cleaning the apartment and walked into Leo's home office. His laptop was open. I never snooped, I trusted him, but that day, something told me to look. Emails, hundreds of them. Between Leo and someone named Sabrina Vaughn. She was young, blonde, newly hired at Armstrong Industries. Marketing exec. A replacement, I guess. For me, they talked about me like I was wallpaper. Disposable, laughable. Had dinner with the charity case again, one of his emails read. She asked about the gala. Lol. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I documented everything. Printed emails. Saved screenshots. Downloaded the entire exchange to a USB stick. When Leo came home, I was sitting at the table. I slid the printouts toward him. His response? Wow, you really went through my emails? You're more pathetic than I thought. Then came the pitch, stay married on paper for his image. Sabrina was fine with it, he said. You'll still have access to the apartment. Maybe I'll even drop in, if you're lucky. I left that night, grabbed CJ, packed a bag, and drove to my parents. Mom cried when she saw me. Dad? He didn't say a word, just hugged me. 3 days later, the divorce papers arrived, hand-delivered by Eleanor, who actually smirked as she handed them over. I always knew you weren't a good match for my son, but it got worse. Leo wanted full custody, claimed I was unstable, unfit, erratic behavior, excessive drinking, lies stacked like bricks. Good thing I had evidence. When my lawyer presented the judge with the emails, complete with timestamps, the room shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain. I was the woman who had been gaslit for years. The judge ruled in my favor, primary custody for me. Weekend visits for Leo. Child support. Game. Set. Match. I went back to work full-time, moved in with my parents temporarily. CJ thrived. So did I. Quietly. Steadily. But Leo and Sabrina weren't done. They showed up one Saturday in a Range Rover, walking into my parents' home like they owned it. "This is where our son lives?" Sabrina sneered. "It's like a retirement center. I lost it. Kicked them out." Leo laughed as he left. "You think you've won?" I haven't even started. I believed him. But I wasn't scared. I was ready. I'd never considered myself someone who could ruin someone else's life. That wasn't me. I just wanted peace. Wanted to raise my son. Wanted the whole mess behind me. But after what Leo and Sabrina pulled at my parents' house, something in me flipped. I realized I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting for respect, for CJ, for myself. A few nights after that encounter, I sat in the kitchen nursing a cup of cold coffee, too wired to sleep. My dad sat down across from me, arms crossed. "You know," he said, "sometimes the best defense is a solid offense." He mentioned an old friend, Mike Taylor, retired detective turned private investigator. Quiet guy. Brilliant when it came to digging up dirt. I was skeptical at first. I didn't want drama. But then I thought about Sabrina's smug face in my mom's living room. Her nails, her diamonds, her fake laugh. And I remembered the emails, the lies, the insults. So I met with Mike. His office was nothing special, smelled like old paper and black coffee. But the man knew what he was doing. I gave him every detail I had. Sabrina's real name, where she worked, the emails, everything. Mike took notes. Asked sharp questions. Promised to be discreet. Then he said the one thing I'll never forget, "Natalie. People like her always slip. You just have to watch where they land." While Mike started digging, I kept living. Got CJ into a nearby daycare. Picked up more hours at the firm. Got better at saying no. And yes, Leo and Sabrina kept poking. Petty emails. Social media jabs. Sabrina even left a comment on my LinkedIn that said, "Some of us don't need pity jobs to feel important." Real original. But I stayed focused. I had something they didn't time. Patience. And, thanks to Mike eventually, proof. 3 weeks later, Mike called. "You're gonna want to come in." He had a thick folder waiting for me. "So, first things first," he said, sliding me a document. "Sabrina Vaughn? Not her real name. Her birth name is Casey Vaughn. She's been using her sister's ID for years." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "She's been bouncing around the country since she was 20. Escort gigs, sugar baby scams, phony business ventures. She changes her look, name, city, rinse, and repeat." My stomach dropped. "And this?" Mike handed me another file. "This is where it gets good." Turns out Casey, aka Sabrina, had been siphoning money from Armstrong Industries. Small transfers spread across different accounts. Barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. But Mike had receipts, literal bank records. And not just that, emails. She'd been leaking confidential company info to competitors, product ideas, expansion plans, merger strategies. It was industrial sabotage, white-collar crime, plain and simple. I sat there flipping through the papers, heart pounding. "This is enough to bury her," I whispered. Mike nodded. "And possibly Leo, if he knew anything." Which, by the way, his email shows he signed off on a few shady expenses that link back to her. Of course he did. I left with 2 USB drives and a paper trail long enough to make any legal team drool. But I didn't act yet. I waited. I wanted the perfect moment. Then came the invitation. A call from Eleanor Armstrong herself. The same woman who once made me feel like gum on her Italian shoes. "It's Charles's 60th next weekend," she said, like she was reading off a grocery list. "Family only, but obviously CJ should attend. And you'll have to come with him." She made it sound like I was the help. "Try to keep things low-key, Natalie. Don't embarrass anyone." I could have declined, could have said screw it, but instead I said, of course, wouldn't miss it, because now I had a plan. That Saturday, I wore my simplest black dress. Nothing flashy, just clean, classic. I braided CJ's hair neatly, packed a backpack of his toys, and walked into their mansion like I wasn't about to set the whole place on fire metaphorically, of course. The party was exactly what you'd expect. Champagne flutes, velvet drapes, awkward small talk, expensive hors d'oeuvre no one could pronounce. I kept to myself, sipping sparkling water, watching CJ get paraded around like a show pony. People whispered when I passed, but I didn't care. Then Leo arrived, slick suit, fake smile, arm draped around Sabrina, Casey wearing a fire engine red gown that practically screamed, "Look at me." And trust me, everyone did. Leo clinked his glass. "Everyone," he announced. "I'd like you to meet my future wife, Sabrina. We'll be tying the knot next spring." Applause. Smiles. Eleanor looked like she'd finally won. A true Armstrong bride. She beamed. And that was my cue. I stood up, cleared my throat. "Actually, before we toast to the happy couple, I think there's something you all should see." Silence. I opened my purse and pulled out the folder. "Let's start with this," I said. Sabrina, real name. Casey Vaughn has been using her sister's identity for the past few years. That's a felony, by the way. Sabrina's face drained of color. "What are you?" "Oh, I'm not done." I handed Charles a stack of papers. "She's also been stealing from Armstrong Industries. Wire transfers, ghost accounts. Here's a list. Oh, and she's been leaking your product roadmap to competitors. You know that deal you lost to Orion Manufacturing?" She handed it to them 3 days before you pitched. Gasps. The kind of collective realization you only see in courtroom dramas or reality TV. Charles turned crimson. Eleanor looked like she might faint. Leo just stood there, mouth slightly open, eyes bouncing from me to the documents to Casey. "But Casey?" she snapped. "She's lying," she shrieked. "This is all fake. She's bitter." I held up the USB. "Everything's here. Emails, transfers, password logs." I gave a copy to a lawyer, just in case. Leo stepped back like she was contagious. "Is this true?" Casey glared at me, then turned to him. "You knew about those expenses. Don't act innocent." Boom. The room erupted. Charles ordered them out. Eleanor called her a fraud. Casey tried to save face, but it was over. That carefully crafted persona crumbled right there in front of dozens of guests. As they left Casey sobbing, Leo stunned, I felt nothing but clarity. Not rage, not smugness, just peace. Charles turned to me before I left. "Natalie, thank you for exposing this, for protecting our son, your son. CJ deserves better than all this." Eleanor even muttered something that might have been an apology. Hard to say, her voice was shaky. 3 days later, Casey was arrested at O'Hare trying to catch a flight under a fake passport. Leo got fired, evicted from the company apartment. Turns out no one in the financial world wants to hire someone who can't tell when his fiancée is bleeding the company dry. Funny how karma works. It's strange what silence feels like after the noise dies down. After Casey's arrest and Leo's very public fall from grace, things got quiet. No more late-night threats, no smug messages, no pop-ins to see CJ, just a hollow space where their chaos used to be. And honestly, I didn't miss it. Leo moved out of state a few weeks later, California, I heard. One of his college buddies had a condo and a short-term gig lined up. He called CJ every Sunday at 7 p.m., like clockwork. The calls were short, awkward. CJ didn't always know what to say, and Leo didn't really know how to talk to a toddler over a phone. But I let it happen. I never spoke on the calls. Didn't see the point. Some bridges don't just burn, they collapse. The Armstrongs, well, that was another twist I didn't expect. A few days after the party, I got a call from Charles. He asked if he could meet me for lunch. Alone. It felt surreal. sitting across from the man who once acted like I wasn't worth his time. "I owe you an apology," he said, cutting into a steak he probably didn't even taste. "For everything. You protected this family more than I ever did." I didn't say much, just nodded. That was enough for him. A week later, I got a key in the mail. No note, just a lease agreement. A condo, small but beautiful, in a quiet neighborhood near a good school. It was in my name, fully paid. I stared at the key for a long time. It wasn't about the money. It was the message. Not pity, not a handout, just recognition. CJ and I moved in a month later. I painted his room blue, let him pick out superhero sheets, set up my home office next to the window so I could work while watching him play in the courtyard. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And something changed in Eleanor too. She started stopping by. At first, she'd say it was to drop off a toy for CJ or a book she thought he'd like. Then it became cookies, a blanket, a birthday gift for me that she pretended wasn't a big deal, but clearly had thought about. Last Christmas, she invited my parents over for dinner. I almost said no, but my mom, ever the peacekeeper, told me sometimes forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. So we went. And you know what? It wasn't awful. Charles asked my dad about his police work like he genuinely cared. Eleanor and my mom swapped gardening tips over cider. And for a brief moment, it felt like we weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. CJ played on the floor in front of the fireplace with a puzzle Eleanor had picked out. He laughed. And I realized, this kid? He was okay. He was going to be okay. The truth is, I still have hard days. Some mornings I wake up and wonder if it was all a dream. If the betrayal, the lies, the whole unraveling of the life I thought I was building really happened. Some nights I still flinch when I hear CJ call out for his dad in his sleep. But those moments pass, and every time they do, I remind myself, we made it. I made it. I went from a woman who begged to be seen to a woman who sees herself clearly. I'm not the girl who tried to fit into someone else's world. I'm the woman who built her own. The job is steady now. The bills get paid. I started a side hustle, helping small businesses set up accounting systems. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Last week, CJ asked me a question while looking at an old wedding photo I hadn't gotten around to throwing out. "Mom," he said, "do you miss Daddy?" I paused, sat down next to him, smoothed his hair. "Sometimes," I said, "but sometimes missing something doesn't mean you want it back." He nodded, like that made perfect sense. I tucked him into bed that night, sat on the couch with a cup of tea, and let myself feel proud. Not triumphant, just steady, solid. Because the truth is, revenge didn't save me. Exposure didn't fix everything. But it gave me a clearing, a chance to breathe, to rebuild. And what I built? It may not look like the glossy life Leo once flaunted, but it's real. CJ laughs in the morning. My parents come over every Sunday with bagels. Eleanor drops off rose clippings like she's trying not to admit she cares. Charles sometimes texts me spreadsheets and asks for advice like I'm the one running the company now. It's funny, isn't it? I was once the woman they whispered about, the accountant wife, the outsider. Now, I'm the one who walked through fire and came out clean, and I didn't need to burn anyone to do it. Just needed to stop shrinking. Story 3. You'd think growing up in a wealthy family would mean I had it easy. Trust funds, boarding schools, private jets, the whole shebang. But no, my dad believed in sweat equity. And I mean that literally. He started his fitness nutrition brand, IDOWorkHereLady, from a garage and raised me to know the grind. While my friends were off at summer camps or Europe trips, I was managing shipping labels and tracking protein powder inventory at age 12. That was our deal. If I wanted a slice of the empire one day, I'd have to earn it like he did. And honestly, I loved it. I loved the hustle. I loved the pride in his eyes. When I solved my first shipping dispute, with a pissed-off distributor. I loved that he trusted me enough to put me in every department of the business, from sweeping warehouse floors to handling supplier contracts in college. Relationships, dating, non-existent. My roommate used to joke I was in a committed relationship with spreadsheets, until one night changed everything. The annual VitalWorks holiday party was in full swing by the time I arrived, late as usual. I'd stayed behind to finalize Q4 numbers. When I finally walked in, the music was pumping, lights flashing, drinks flowing, and there he was, tall, charismatic, smiling, like he'd been waiting his whole life for me to show up. "Hey, you must be Nina," he said, holding out his hand. "Heard a lot about you from the main office." His name was Daniel Wells. He worked out of our Chicago branch, tall, soft-spoken, and had this calm confidence that immediately put you at ease. We ended up talking for hours, and it felt different, not forced, not performative. He wasn't intimidated by me or overly impressed by my last name. It was just two people connecting. When he asked for my number, I didn't even hesitate. We started talking daily. Morning texts, late night, FaceTimes, jokes, rants, future plans. It didn't take long before we both floated the idea, what if one of us moved? I offered first. "Come to HQ. We're growing. It's a great career move." He hesitated. "My family's here, Nina. My mom's not in the best health. My sister depends on me with the kids. I can't leave." "Fair. I respected that," he countered. "But what if you came to Chicago? You're overqualified for what our branch needs." It felt impulsive, but something in me said, why not? I was 28, financially stable, and craving something new. So I asked my dad. To my surprise, he just smiled and said, "I've been waiting for you to say that. That office needs leadership, and I trust you." A month later, I was living in Daniel's apartment downtown, surrounded by boxes and Chicago cold. "Welcome home," he whispered, hugging me tight. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine something beyond quarterly reports and profit margins. Meeting his family was less magical. They lived together in a cozy house in the suburbs, his mom, Gloria, his sister, Bree, and her teenage son, Mason. They were friendly enough at first, but there was a weird energy I couldn't shake, like I was an outsider sitting in someone else's seat. "You must be used to mansions and chauffeurs," Gloria said, as I helped set the table during our first dinner. "Bet this feels quaint." I laughed politely. "Actually, we lived pretty simply growing up. Dad always made us earn our keep." She didn't look convinced. Bri gave me a once-over and muttered, "If I had your money, I'd at least be wearing Chanel." I was wearing jeans and a cardigan from Target. Guess that didn't fly. Daniel didn't say much, just squeezed my hand and changed the subject. 2 months later, he proposed during a walk near the lake. It wasn't flashy, just us. A silver ring and a quiet, hopeful question. I said yes. Planning the wedding was a struggle. He wanted big. I wanted intimate. In the end, we compromised on something low-key, immediate family only. Gloria wasn't pleased. "I expected more from Nina Lane," she said during the reception. "All this money and no taste." I let it slide. I was used to people projecting onto me. The real tension started right after we got married. We were having dinner with his family standard Sunday night. Chaos when Gloria brought it up. "So, have you talked to your father about buying you two a place yet? There's a house in North Shore that would be perfect. Pool, 5 bedrooms. I blinked. "We're actually saving up to buy a place ourselves." Dead silence. Forks stopped midair. Eyes stared. "But surely your father wouldn't mind helping?" Bri asked. Voice loaded. "I'm sure he'd help if we were in trouble," I said. "But Daniel and I want to do this ourselves." Daniel nodded beside me, but I could feel the sweat in his palm. Then Gloria said, "Well, if you're staying in his apartment, maybe Nina should pay rent. She earns more after all." Daniel didn't even flinch. "Makes sense. Rent's $3,000 a month." I raised an eyebrow. That felt high for where we lived, but I didn't want to make a scene. Okay, I said. That's fair. So every month, I handed Daniel $3,000. He handled the payments, or so I thought. At first, I didn't think much about the rent arrangement. Life was busy. I was running the Chicago branch, making friends, trying to build a life. But little red flags started popping up. One evening, while crunching numbers for taxes, I suggested putting the lease in my name. It would just streamline things. Daniel immediately stiffened. That won't work. I've rented this place forever from a family friend. No formal lease. It's a handshake deal. Weird, but not totally implausible. Then came the key incident. I came home early one day with a migraine and found Gloria and Bree lounging on our couch in my apartment, eating my groceries, shoes up on the coffee table, wine glasses in hand like it was their place. "Oh, hey, sweetie," Gloria said. "Hope you don't mind we needed a girls' night." No apology. No acknowledgement that they were intruding. That turned into a pattern. I'd come home and find them there, or see signs they'd been digging through my stuff. One time I caught Bree reading my old journals like it was a casual beach read. I confronted Daniel. "They can't just come in here uninvited. They're family, Nina. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic? They read my diary. Cue crocodile tears from Gloria. "I knew you thought you were too good for us." Daniel took her side. Told me to apologize. Buy them gifts to smooth things over. I did. Out of peace. Out of fear of losing him. A designer bag for Gloria. Expensive boots for Bree. That only opened the floodgates. After the whole gift-giving for peace thing, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could move on. That maybe they'd start respecting my space, or at the very least, my boundaries. But if anything, it made them bolder. Every holiday became an excuse for more gifts. Not from them to them. "Did you know next Thursday is National Sisters' Day?" Bri texted one morning. "I saw the cutest Gucci tote. You'd be such a good sister-in-law." "Your mother's birthday is coming up," Daniel reminded me later that week, hinting at a weekend spa package. It wasn't just holidays either. One time, Gloria asked for a $700 swatch because it was the anniversary of Daniel's first tooth. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I tried to laugh it off, to rationalize it as harmless eccentricity, but it kept piling on. And the worst part? Daniel never pushed back. He'd just shrug and say, "If we can afford it, why not keep everyone happy?" Except, I wasn't happy. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, suppressing every instinct to keep the peace. And then came Mason. Bree's teenage son started showing up at our apartment more often. At first, I figured he was just escaping a tense house. I didn't mind he was Daniel's nephew, and I'd been a teenager once. But this wasn't just normal teenage attitude. Mason had a chip on his shoulder the size of Illinois. He'd blast the TV, leave dishes everywhere, eat all the food. One night, I made a homemade lasagna from my grandma's recipe, and Mason took one bite before saying, "Tastes like you had a maid growing up, but you can't even cook." I bit my tongue, but inside I was boiling. Another time, he asked for $50 to go to the movies. I said no. He kicked the dining chair and muttered, "You're rich. Stop acting broke. Mom says you're just pretending to be normal." I told Daniel. He barely looked up from his phone. "He's just a kid, babe. Handle it. It's good practice for parenting someday." I almost laughed. Parenting? If this was practice, I was failing. Because the next day, Mason came back asking for money for a video game. When I refused again, he turned up the volume on the TV and said, "You're not even family. You're just a wallet." That one hit harder than I expected. Later that night, Daniel and I were brushing our teeth and I finally snapped. "Daniel, do you not see what's happening here?" He spit, rinsed, and met my eyes in the mirror. "You're being overly sensitive." And that was it. No conversation, no solution. 2 years. I kept telling myself things would get better. That maybe I was the one being unreasonable. That if I just kept trying, they'd come around. But the more I gave, the more they took. And the more they took, the more invisible I became in my own life. One weekend, I decided to go home, my real home, my parents' place. I needed a break, to feel grounded, to be around people who didn't see me as a walking bank account. I'm going to visit my folks, I told Daniel over coffee. Want to come? He didn't even pause. Can't. Promised Mom I'd help fix their fence. Of course he did. The weekend with my parents was peaceful, restful, real. I helped my mom with gardening. My dad told the same corny jokes. And for the first time in months, I could breathe without checking my tone or filtering my words. I came back Sunday night with a clear head and walked straight into a nightmare. The smell hit first. Beer, cigarettes, something sour and rotting. I stepped inside and froze. Pizza boxes stacked like a game of Jenga. Solo cups on every surface. Cigarette butts in my favorite vase. And right there on my couch were 6 passed out teenagers, including Mason. I yelled, loud, "Get up, all of you, out, now." They groaned and scrambled. One kid threw up in my sink on the way out. But Mason stayed seated, feet up, drinking from an open beer can. "Why should I leave?" he asked, all smug. "Uncle Daniel said I could crash here." I clenched my jaw. "We rent this apartment." "You don't live here," he laughed. "This apartment?" He gestured around like a game show host. "This isn't rented. Daniel owns it. Has for years. Got it when his grandpa died. You really didn't know?" Everything in me went still, cold, silent. "You're lying," I said, but my voice was barely a whisper. "Nope. Ask him. Been in his name forever. Everyone knows. Except you, I guess." I didn't remember what happened next. My body went on autopilot. I walked into the kitchen, sat down at the table, and just stared into space. 2 years, $3,000 a month, $72,000 total. All of it straight into Daniel's pocket. All those weird reactions whenever I asked to put the lease in my name. All the times he made rent payments on my behalf. The rushed explanations. The screen turning away when I walked into the room. It had all been a lie. I must have looked like I was going to pass out, because Mason's whole demeanor suddenly shifted. He got quiet, awkward. "There's something else," he mumbled. I started recording stuff. At first, it was just when they talked crap about me. But they talk about you a lot, too. He pulled out his phone, pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the air. That smooth, charming voice I used to love. "It's perfect," he said, laughing. $3,000 a month, straight into my account. She doesn't even ask questions. More audio followed. "Rachel, she'll cave. Just keep bringing up family loyalty. I got a Prada bag last week. Gloria, get her pregnant. Her rich daddy will buy you 2 a house. Just be careful, don't get caught." And then Daniel again. "She's so gullible. Can't cook. Can't keep me happy. Thank God for Amanda. And Julie. And what's her name from accounting?" I sat there, every word carving into me. I finally looked up at Mason, my throat dry. "Can you send those to me?" He nodded, already tapping the screen. "They're snakes," he said, almost whispering. "All of them. Even my mom. That's why they hate me. I don't lie like they do." He left quietly. I sat in silence for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even clean up. I just packed. 1 suitcase, 1 overnight bag, and my phone with every recording saved. Then I drove straight to Gloria's house. I knew they'd all be there. Sunday dinner, like always. Like some twisted family ritual. I walked in without knocking. "Nina?" Gloria blinked. "We weren't expecting. Show me the lease agreement," I said, cutting her off. Daniel blinked. "What?" "For the apartment. Show me the lease. Show me the rent payments. Anything," he fumbled. "It's not like that. You know Mr. Johnson doesn't do contracts." "There is no Mr. Johnson," I said, voice like ice. "It's in your name. Always has been." Silence. Rachel reached for her wine glass. Gloria tried to smile. "Would you like some roast?" "Shut up, Gloria." That got their attention. I pulled out my phone. Hit play. Daniel's voice again. $3,000 a month. She doesn't even question it. The room was dead silent except for their own voices exposing them. Lies, mockery, greed, cheating. When I stopped the audio, I looked Daniel in the eye. I want a divorce, I said. And if any of you contact me again, this goes public. No one spoke. No one moved. I walked out and didn't look back. I didn't go back to the apartment. I left the mess, the empty bottles, the half-eaten pizza. Let it sit there like a memorial to everything I thought my life was. I drove straight to my parents' house. Mom opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask a single question. Just pulled me into a hug and whispered, "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Dad came downstairs in his slippers and stared like he was seeing me for the first time. I didn't have to say anything. I just handed him my phone and let the recording speak for me. By the time they were done listening, my mom looked heartbroken. My dad looked furious. "I'll handle this," he said, and I knew he meant it. The next morning, Daniel was fired from IDOWorks. My dad didn't pull strings, he cut them. His name was gone from the company roster by noon, and by the end of the day, an internal email went out warning about breaches of ethical conduct. The divorce papers were served within the week. Daniel tried to fight, claimed it was just a misunderstanding, said I overreacted, tried to guilt me, even cry on the phone. I blocked every number he used. He hired a lawyer, until mine presented the audio files to the judge. Then he got real quiet. He left with nothing. The apartment stayed in his name, but with his reputation ruined and no income, he ended up having to sell it. From what I heard, he moved in with Gloria. Fitting. Bree posted cryptic messages on social media for weeks. Something about ungrateful people biting the hand that fed them. Mason liked my posts in response. Speaking of Mason, he reached out a couple months later, asked if we could talk. We met for coffee. He looked older, less angry, more real. I moved out, he told me. Got a job at the car wash. Mom freaked when she found out I sent you those recordings. But honestly, best decision I ever made. I believed him. I can help, I offered. If you want to get into school, or... He shook his head, smiling. I appreciate it, but I want to do this part on my own. Clean slate. You know? Yeah, I knew exactly what he meant. 3 months after the divorce, I stood in my new apartment, my actual apartment. A 1-bedroom, mid-rise, rented under my own name. No lies. No hidden deals. No one else with a key. The place was still half empty. No art on the walls yet. A folding chair instead of a couch. But it was quiet, peaceful, mine. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I didn't see the woman who fell for Daniel's easy charm. I didn't see the people pleaser who let a whole family walk through her like she was made of glass. I saw someone solid, someone who had finally chosen herself. I pulled out a velvet pouch from the drawer. Inside was my grandmother's ring, the one I kept in a box while I wore Daniel's engagement ring. I slipped it onto my finger and held my hand up to the light. It sparkled like freedom. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I deleted their numbers. Daniel, Gloria, Bree. One by one, gone. It's funny, looking back. For 2 years, I convinced myself that love meant compromise. That marriage meant endurance. That giving endlessly was just what you do when you're with someone. But love shouldn't feel like debt, and family doesn't weaponize guilt. They took from me, lied to me, made me doubt my instincts. But I gave them one thing: they never expected: distance. And distance, it turns out, is a kind of justice. They're still stuck in that house, circling the same dinner table, spinning the same stories, still calling themselves a family. But me? I have peace, a clean home, a future I can trust. And when people ask if I miss him, Daniel, the man I married, I just shake my head and smile. No, I say, but I'm glad I met him, because without him, I might have never found the strength to start over. And this version of me, the one who walked away, the one who didn't scream, the one who built something true with her own hands, She's not going anywhere.